Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
My name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Vroom Vroom Ryman.
Yeah, and we just watched Last Night.
No, not that one, the other one.
Yeah, Clive Owen was great in this.
Coming up on the last night on the planet, and you're listening to CKRT.
There are a staggering number of projects called Last Night.
We watched the one from 1998.
The 98
the one you...
Canadian film.
It's so Canadian.
It is maximum Canadian.
Before we get started, big ol' thank you to Steven, our Patreon producer.
Thank you.
Who told us to watch this movie. And we did. We watched this movie called Last Night from 1998. This is a movie, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's about the last night for Earth. The end of the world.
The world is ending.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's listed, the genre, when I first looked it up, is listed as downbeat. And I was like, oh no.
Downbeat?
It's from the right. Yeah. It's like, oh, opposite of upbeat. Jesus. It's from the writer of Blindness, to which I also went, oh no. He's also the star.
I've not seen that.
Blindness is a really bleak movie. This movie's got a lot of weird. It's through Canada. It's got a lot of weird little filmmaker stuff. Like there's a lot of filmmakers in this. Cronenberg, obviously.
Yeah, David Cronenberg. Sarah Polley is in it.
Sarah Polley. Also, the director of Hardcore Logo and Pontypool has a cameo in this. And in fact, one of the characters in this is the character in Hardcore Logo.
Billy Talent.
Yeah.
Is the sex maniac in this movie.
Yeah, he's sex hero. Sex hero.
Yeah, we'll call him sex hero. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so yeah, it's also it's like a Y2K movie, I realized, because it's 1998.
Very much
and I was
so.
like, right.
Yeah.
Because it's about the idea that the world is going to end at midnight. I don't know why it would coincidentally, because it seems like the sun is going to vaporize them. The idea, and they don't call attention to it right away, but when I started realizing they're saying it's 9:00 p.m. and it's
broad
still light
daylight.
out.
Yeah. So for a second there, I was like, does the sun not set in Toronto? Because I've never been to Canada. But no, it's just really subtle. And then it becomes obvious at the end as they sort of, the coda for each character's storyline is a bright flash of light, as if the sun is suddenly flaring out the lens. And
so it's very I don't want to say Pulp Fiction. It's very much that idea where it's a series. There's a bunch of movies like this. Playing by Heart, for some reason, comes to mind, where it's a bunch of stories that seem unconnected that then start weaving together, right? And it's all these different people and how they're handling the last day on Earth, which I actually personally thought is. I've been thinking about that concept for a while. I think it would make a really good mini-series, because my problem with end of the world stuff, because there's a few of these, right?
Yeah.
Melancholia, 444.
Yeah, I sort of hate this premise.
What I was about to say is the premise, in my opinion, is really hard to pull off as a movie, because you don't necessarily have enough time in a movie. And that's why, it's such a very basic premise idea that we've seen.
It's like the most basic high concept that you can be in. We've seen it so many times, and it's been done many times, particularly in the last 20 years.
Right, but not as a miniseries, as far as I know. That's why I keep thinking, why hasn't anybody made a miniseries where you spend enough time so that when the world ends, because you need to make it so that it absolutely ends, right? That's the point of this premise. It matters.
I think they've done one where it didn't, but like, yeah, Melancholia, Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. There was one very recently. That I can't remember, but we covered it on Hypecast like a year or two ago. Anyway.
Yeah. What do you think of this one?
I went on a journey with this film. I really didn't like it for the first 20 minutes.
Okay.
But as the movie went on, I started to become really impressed with the directing. And then by the end of the film, I did wind up finding it kind of moving. Yeah,
kind of the same. I didn't hate it at first, but I was very cynical about it for the reasons you're saying, which is like it felt like fresh out of film school 90s-esque.
Well, and it's like the main
Gen X edginess,
Yeah, because the main character is also the writer director.
Exactly. And that's a big red flag.
Oof, he comes off, I think his character is the weakest of the part of the movie, although by the end he makes sense and you understand him.
Yeah, and I thought they did a good job with that.
They did. It's just like up front, he really does he almost seems like a Dennis Leary character, although he's not.
Yeah, I thought we were going to get like Buffalo 66, where it's like, it feels like just him jerking off the whole movie.
Yeah, I was really worried about, like, I was worried like it was going to be, okay, this is my soapbox it's the end of the world, so I'm going to tell everybody. Like he's Bill Hicks in his own mind. I'm going to tell everybody what I think about them and all my problems with the world. So the first scene with him having fake Christmas dinner with his family does come off like that, and it's like repellent. Like he's not likable in this scene.
No,
he plays the character in such an odd way that you don't really understand his character for a long time, and it's a big risk for a movie. Yeah, he seems like a dick.
Yeah. And so, like, it starts with, like, basically this family having a Christmas dinner. Well, it starts, and this is important, because I was also impressed by how the writing worked. And, yeah, it's more satisfying than I expected. So it starts with him lying on the floor, and he gets a message from the gas company assuring him that here on the final hours, they're going to keep the lights on, essentially. They're going to keep things going. And then I think that's when we get Sandra Oh.
I forget. We get her. Yes, we get her first, actually.
Yeah, because she gets her car flipped.
Yeah, she's going inside to get a bunch of groceries and a bottle of wine. And as she's in the store, this random group of people just flips her car over and pushes it down the street.
And they're showing. I thought this was smart.
Yes,
so
this is a thing that one of my complaints with the other movies that we mentioned is there's not enough of this in it.
Yeah, well, she plays the character Sandra. Apparently, this was written for her. But like they show her like in this abandoned supermarket, and the subtle things that they start doing is like she's picking between two wines, and it's like just take them both. Like that idea where throughout the film, there's this idea that at the end of the world, people are still kind of stuck in little habits. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you have David Cronenberg is still at work at the gas company giving everybody a message.
We show the gas company, and there's this one woman working there, and he's her shitty boss, and he's just like, so I'm going to head out. And she's the last person there to like basically keep things going. And again, you're like, why is she doing this? But it's like that thought of like, well,
what else am I going to do?
What else am I going to do? This is my life. And there's a lot of little things like that. Like at the dinner, they're like to the grandmother, like, we got you some ham because you can't eat chicken and because of your condition. And it's like, what does it fucking matter? You know, they're all going to die in like 4 hours.
Yeah.
It starts about 4 hours to the end of the world. And yeah, this family Christmas, and he's being a real edgelord. The dad,
right.
by the way,
it was so off-putting to watch an independent movie from the 90s starring the writer-director. And the very first scene, he's a fucking maximum edgelord. I was like, oh no, how long is this movie?
Right, but the beauty is,
I thought we had another pool hall junkies on our hands.
Exactly. And that's the thing is what he's actually setting up is an arc.
Yeah,
so that's
nice.
nice.
That was nice.
But it is like you're like, is he going to be like this the whole time? Is it going to be people hanging out at the end of the world? You know, just like doing stuff, having edgy conversations, and it's like, better not.
Yeah.
And
I've seen
his
that
dad
movie
is
too.
his dad is the ultra paranoid alien from the TNG episode. I think it's called Connected, where Picard and Crusher are psychically connected. So shout out to that guy.
Sure.
So it's the family is like extreme denial. They don't want to face it, and then they're sad that he's leaving because he's like, I don't want to be here for it. I want to be alone. And there's this question of like, where do you want to be? And it's a question I think everybody has asked, you know? And it's a fun question. Like, what would you do if it was the last day on Earth?
Yeah. Who would you spend it with? What would you do in your
and he doesn't want to spend it with his family, essentially. And they're sad about that. But you get the feeling that there's like some trauma there. Maybe they didn't have the best relationship. You know, there's this feeling of like,
well, it's
maybe
telling
they're just
that,
trying
like,
to make up for it at the end.
Yeah, and like his sister Sarah Polly is also leaving, but then they tell the parents that she's going with her boyfriend to see her boyfriend's parents, and they're fine with that.
Right, and they're like, why do you want to be alone?
Yeah, and because we also don't know what has happened to him at this point. So there's also that additional layer of it. They do a great job with some reveals in this movie.
There's some really good exposition in this. So we have all these pieces starting. There's this guy with his family. There's the gas company, a woman, and David Cronenberg. And there's Sandra Oh, who's trying to get somewhere, and her car is flipped. So he leaves, right? And basically, what starts happening is like everybody starts intermingling, right? Sandra Oh gets on this bus, and like it's clear that just like the world is so broken, right? There's people doing like light chaos, but it's not like
it's also kind of like
nihilist chaos.
Yeah, it's also kind of like New Year's Eve chaos, or like we just won the World Series chaos.
Yeah, we're here for the end. They've accepted it. People have known for a while.
It's been. They say it's been 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, she gets on a bus, and there's like a woman and her kid. And she's waiting for the bus driver. And she's like, how long have you been waiting here? And they're like 20 minutes. And he's like, do you know when the bus driver's coming? And she's like, what bus driver? And it's clear that this woman has just lost her mind. And she's just here with her kid who's like complaining, her teenage kid.
Right. Her kid's saying something like, I wanted to get my ears pierced.
Yeah. And so it's like some people are just completely broken down. You know,
I like
everybody's.
What I began to get impressed with in terms of the direction was first there's some bold decisions made here in terms of not necessarily shots, but like the music.
Yeah.
Is a little over the top in a couple of sequences, but it's very effective. Where it like the movie is able to go through the tone, the different tones that it wants, without ever being too much of a downer, without ever being too like witty, you know what I mean? Like being like, look at how charming our gallows humor is. It like really manages to maintain this really human tone that is sometimes melodramatic, it's sometimes very funny, it's sometimes frightening. There's a couple of scary moments in this movie.
Yeah. It's funny, but not ha-ha funny.
No. It gets very sad, but it's also like it never lingers on it. It's like I said, it ultimately ends up being really moving because it ends up being a lot of snapshots of what it's like to just be a human being, I guess.
Yes, it sort of like when I finished watching it, I walked to the other room and like said to Hannah, like, I think I watched like a really neat movie.
Yeah, I think it was really good. It
was like, huh. And I like kind of walked around thinking about it for a little bit for that reason. Just like, this is, yeah. And so like, it was a good movie ultimately because, you know, not many movies make me walk out of it and like sit there and like puzzle it for a bit and go, like, yeah. So we meet Apocalypse Jogger, who I want to be.
I love the
She's
Apocalypse
just running
Jogger.
around. Yeah, she's just running around saying like 4 more
it's
hours.
Almost time.
Yeah. She's a hero.
Yeah.
And then we meet Sex Hero, other hero.
Sex Hero,
and
Billy
he's
Talent.
like he looks like a member of Sugar Ray. A sex worker comes to his house as we first meet, and she it's like kind of awkward, and then he says something along the lines of like, I want you to know it's not because you're black. And she's like, yes, it is. And then they have sex. And what we learn is what happens next is his school teacher is there.
Yeah.
And then it's clear he's having sex with her. What we learn is that he is just ticking off every sexual box he hadn't gotten to.
Yeah.
And he has like a serial killer room of like sex, his madness room, which is his kitchen, his sex conquest kitchen.
That was a bit of a chilling reveal when he shows it to the main character, because every sort of encounter he has with a woman, you see him go into this room and close the door, and then he comes out.
He puts on the same like soul music.
He puts on the same music. Yeah, he comes out around the back, and
basically his arc is we learn that he's the friend of the main character, and he this whole thing is Sandra Oh encounters the main character, and she's like, I just got to get to my husband, and he's basically trying to help her, which I would argue for the most part this was my end of the world day, where I was like, I wouldn't mind going on like a fun little adventure. Like he basically like, let's steal a car. And then I love how they do this, because he's so confident until they smash open the car. And then she's like, do you know how to do this? And then it occurs to him, it seems like he doesn't know how to actually steal a car. He was so like confident that he could do it.
That was one of
without thinking about it.
That was one of the funnier bits, because they let it ride.
Yeah.
They sort of park the camera and they frame Sandra Oh through the steering wheel, and she has quite a bit of dialogue where she's talking about her husband and her relationship, as we're not really paying attention to what he's doing right away. And then it eventually, like, he's fiddling on the floor. It eventually gets to the point where he's like jumping up and down on the steering wheel almost, before she finally asks, do you know what you're doing?
Yeah. He has no idea.
Nope.
No idea.
He's seen people hotwire cars in movies just like the rest of us. That's the limit of his knowledge.
And basically the sex guy's arc is that he turns out to be the guy to lend them the car, and a friend. And like their last conversation, he's like, do you want to have sex? And they have to have this really, because he's like, that's on my list. Mm-hmm. You're my good friend. And he basically has to like say like, no, like the way he puts it is like, I don't want to have bad sex today. It's the last day. I don't want that on my mind. The other guy. Mm-hmm. So it's like the two versions, where one guy's like, I want to do it all sexually, and the other guy's like, I don't even want to think about sex today.
Right. And we eventually learn that his wife died, and his wife died very recently.
Yeah. Basically he says like near the end, he's like, my wife died, and then I was told that the world was ending.
Yep.
And so that it puts it all together, because when Sandra Oh first goes to his house, she's like, I don't want to, like, she's like, can I use your phone, basically? And she's calling her husband, who we don't know who he is yet, but I kind of knew. Like,
at this point, that was a surprise to me, but yeah.
Once you realize that it's all going to click, I'm like, well, who's here?
Who else could it be if her husband ends up being David Cronenberg?
Yeah. Because he's leaving, and it's like, and then they never say it, I don't think, but they show like him going to home and like having dinner, and like there's clearly a plate. Like there's a lot of show don't tell, which is nice. And one of the things they do is she's like, I don't want to keep you. I think you're clearly your family's coming, and he's like, I don't have a family. I live alone. And she's like, what do you have pictures? These pictures. There's all these pictures that are drawn by little kids on the walls, and he says, oh, those aren't my kids. Those are someone else's kids. And that's all he says. So you're like, at first he gets
one other line in there. He says from daycare, I think, or something. He says he says daycare or preschool or something.
Right. But the implication from the way he says it is that he doesn't know the kids. Like, you're like, why do you have a bunch of kids' drawings and you don't seem to have any emotional attachment to the kids? Where he's just like, yeah, those are other kids' drawings.
Other people's kids.
And it's not, he doesn't say, I'm a teacher. And so you're like, huh. And then later, they show the pictures again once you get a little more insight into this guy, and all the pictures are saying, get well soon. Mm-hmm. And that was all I needed to realize, like, oh, fuck, he had somebody and that person died. But then he spells it out later, but that was a really good exposition where you just show these drawings
and they still don't even really
twice.
Give you much, yeah.
They don't give you much until he then says it.
Sandra Oh finally corners him, and he says like one or two, but they still keep it real vague. He just says what you said. Like, yeah, she got sick, she died, and then I learned that the world was going to end. And that's really all he says about her.
Yeah. And that's, yeah.
But of course, we can
That's
imply
really
that
cool.
she was a school teacher or something. You know,
Yeah.
it's and they do the same thing with Sandra Oh, where they never tell us like, oh, David Cronenberg was my husband. They just show
Right.
her listening to the gas company machine and weeping, and then they make the connection.
At the very end, so what happens is she keeps trying to leave. They try to steal a car that doesn't work. I feel like she gets somewhere and then has to come back. So that's when they borrow the car of the sex hero.
Sex hero / maniac.
And at first he doesn't want to give it to her because he's like, they're collectible cars. I don't want to die with only 2 cars.
Oh, yeah.
And again, it's a lot of people like set in their ways in these really silly ways. But finally he's like, okay, fine, here's the car. And she gets attacked in a traffic jam and is saved by Sarah Pauli's
boyfriend.
Boyfriend or husband. Yeah, boyfriend. But she does, Sandra doesn't know the connection.
And then we see that they, of course, aren't going to his parents' house. They're just going to some party in the street.
Yes. And so they're hanging out in the street. So Sandra Oh comes back and is like, she doesn't know. I think she doesn't know what to do. And that's when he's just
goes back to
ultimately
his
like,
apartment,
ultimately he's like, you can be here for this. At some point, she reveals that what her plan was originally, that her and her husband at midnight were going to shoot each other. They were going to go out on their own terms, essentially.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Cronenberg is just having the worst end of the world. And to the point that he doesn't make it to the end of the world. He has to eat dinner alone.
Yep. He eats his little ice cream alone, and then he gets murdered by some idiot. Just some dude.
Just random idiot. Yeah. Because again, it's this chaos, right? Where his girlfriend is just like annoyed with him, and Cronenberg goes out in the most Cronenberg way, where he's like, "I'm not the one who's scared."
It's haunting. His
and
death
he descends
is haunting.
he descends into like the darkness of his house, and you're like, Jesus.
He backs up away from the guy until he's just a silhouette, and then the shot ends. Yeah,
and we later see him dead.
Yeah,
but Sandra Oh, when she's at our main character's house, she checks his messages because she called him and said, "Call me back here." And his messages are full, and his last message is the gas company one, which is clear as her husband because she's just crying and listening to it on a loop.
Yep.
So it's kind of this idea. Yeah, you're seeing all these different aspects, right? Things going right, things going wrong for people. Everybody's trying to do their own thing.
Things being really poetic and nice. Things being really tragic.
Yep.
Things being
the world's
bittersweet, like that guy throwing his sad piano recital.
Oh yeah, that was great. Where he's just like, I finally got
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's like 6 people there, but they're there.
Yeah. Bone chilling things like the world's largest guitar jam. Bone chilling.
Oh my god!
Worst way to end the world.
It's Randy Bachman holding the world's largest guitar jam for like the last 10 minutes of the world or something, and he's leading like thousands of people in playing "Taking Care of Business." I cannot imagine a worse song to be on loop at the end of the world.
It's so perfect.
It was such a good little thing to throw in there.
Yeah. And then like I also, by the way, Sandra Oh, why didn't she do it like a week? Like, this is some last minute planning, by the way, on her part, but whatever. Because like, don't pick the end of the last day on Earth to do your errands.
That's like going out doing shopping on Christmas Eve.
Exactly.
You're setting yourself up for failure. You should have had the food and the wine and the guns at home.
Exactly. But again, it's supposed to, they treat it like Christmas or New Year's, so it's about like how people, it's sort of, that's what's interesting. It's sort of like a holiday movie. When you think about it, because what are most Christmas movies about? Loneliness, shopping, last minute things. So it's like, don't you have someone?
Yeah, not
Don't
preparing.
you have someone on Christmas? And that's one of the arcs is, don't you have someone? And he's like, I don't want somebody. Like the parent, you realize that why he's so mad when the parents are like, you going to be with someone? It's like, no, my fucking, I think wife or girlfriend died and I'm not over it. I wasn't like, because normally he would, if the world wasn't ending, it would be perfectly acceptable for him to still be alone and mourning, right?
Yeah.
But because it's the end of the world, people are like, that's old news, right? We're all going to die. Like, that's the significance, right? Is like, everybody's like, we're all going to die. So what's the point? He's still feeling this other death.
Yeah.
And he says that way where he's like, back when people died like individually and not all at once.
Yeah.
Like, and so there's this nihilism where it's like the world doesn't care about his pain anymore.
No,
and they're just like,
there's like no capacity for the world to care about his pain anymore.
Right. Yeah. Why would it?
You would think, but that's what this that's part of what this movie's exploring.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And so like people are just like, why don't you have a woman? Why aren't you with someone for this end of the world? And that's what people are bothering him about. And so like once you realize that, you realize why he's an asshole, you know? And again, it's this weird combination of like nihilism and then also like when he hangs up on his dad, he says, I'll call you later.
Yeah.
And it's like 5 minutes till the end of the world. And it's like, no, you won't.
Yeah.
But everybody's just going through the motions, not thinking about it anymore, you know?
Right, yeah. Because you couldn't really, I guess. Or
Yeah.
you could, but like, I don't know. This movie is like really, really kind of moving in a lot of ways where it's a great exploration of what the human reaction really would be, without not being boring, because like it's obviously the more entertaining version, right?
But it's about like the whole spectrum, and him and Sandra Oh basically accept that like, okay, I guess it's going to be us for the end. I'm stuck with this stranger, and she's like, make me fall in love with you real quick. And basically he tells her his story and they agree, and you can tell he's like not quite into it, and she's like, listen, at 12 o'clock we blow our brains out. And I would be like, well, what if it doesn't explode? We'd look like real silly, you know?
Yeah, we'd look real childish.
Yeah. And meanwhile they go back to the parents, and he called the parents and they're happy. They're like, oh, he's with someone. Who is it? He wouldn't tell. And so like they're happy in that weird parent way where it's like, again, like, what's the point? They're just glad he's not alone. I love the old woman who basically says, fuck the kids.
Yeah, fuck them kids.
Yeah, she basically goes like, you know, people always talk about the kids. Who cares about the kids? They haven't lived yet.
Yeah.
I've been around for 80 years. Like, I matter more.
The kids don't know what they're missing yet.
Yeah, it was really funny. And the woman in the gas company, what the sex hero was like, my last one is a virgin, and that's how they connect the woman at the gas company. She leaves work early to go have sex with this guy.
Yeah, with the sex maniac.
They find each other.
Yeah, he has a website.
He has a website.
Advertising his sex heroism.
All right. And basically we see everybody have their last moments.
Yeah.
And our main character and Sandra Oh both have the guns to each other's head, and right at the end they don't shoot each other, they kiss each other instead. Basically they'd rather go out in a moment of love and compassion than a moment of violence.
Yeah, and then the lens flare happens, and that's the end. And that was that's a hell of an image to end your movie on.
It really is. And it's a fascinating film. And yeah, really good. And what it is like, I don't know. The end of the world is it's what we said at the beginning. It's a chance to be really edgy, right?
Yeah,
and like I always think about
go ahead.
You ever read was it Haunted, the Chuck Palahniuk film?
I haven't,
film
but you've talked about it a lot.
He has a short in that about the end of the world as well. That was a very interesting one because it's all about the logistics, right? So there's interesting details that you can go into. In that one, it's that humanity, it's actually mass suicide. Humanity learns that there's an afterlife and it's awesome, but there's also reincarnation. So they decide everybody must die, so there's no reincarnation. Is the idea no one can have any more kids? It's a very silly idea. And they do the Children of Men thing where there's a commercial suicide pill. And they're talking about the logistics of that, how it had to they sold it off the counter first and then people would just die in the aisles. So they had to start selling it behind the counter. And it's all about these weird logistics of talking about well, how would this play out, right? And that was what this feels like, right? Where it's like, well, all right, end of the world, what would realistically happen? It's like, well, people would still be working because there would be infrastructure that we needed. how does that get decided? You know, who are the most passionate people involved? Other people would say, I don't give a shit anymore. People would be rioting in the streets, but it's this very like, again, it's either people have mentally just broken down, or they're just you know, probably drunk and nihilist and just having fun.
think because you know, it's a couple of months since they learned that doom is upon us, so it's like it's hard not to see like the pandemic in this, or even not Y2K. Like Y2K was a big panic, but we did sort of stop caring about it after a while before anybody came out and said we solved it.
Oh,
or it wasn't really that big of an issue to begin with. Like, it's, you know, with the pandemic was the same thing, where it's like within weeks we had people that were like fucking done with it.
Right. How do you deal with unimaginable horror?
Yeah.
Most of the time, your brain just has a bottleneck where it's like, I'm only accepting so much of this. And like, for better or for worse, right? The pandemic's a great version of that, because it's like, we are all numb to it. Even the people who are doing the right thing, even the people who were accepting what was happening. It's like, you can't just sit there and think about it all the time.
No,
you can't sit there and go, I can't believe how many people are dying.
It's a fundamental part of being human, right? Like, that's because ultimately, like I had said, like, this feels like a bunch of snapshots of humanity, right? Like, this is like experiencing kind of what human life is within this context and this nation, this time period, etc. A fundamental part of being human is the knowledge that we're going to die, right? Like, we know it's going to happen. So it's like this on an accelerated timetable, but it's that aspect of humanity that I think is a big part of that device's function, I guess, in this movie, is that ticking clock that sort of being alive, like existence, puts on all of us. But part of existing is that you can't think about that all the time. Like, you and I are dealing with that right now. Like, there's a relentless death approaching us both, but you know, we can't think about that all the time.
Oh yeah, that's kind of what these the plot of the end of the world is really about, right? Is the inevitability of death.
Yeah.
The fact that we're all going to die at some point, that's gonna happen, and that is so fucking overwhelming.
It's too huge.
It's too big that most of your day and your time, you just don't think about it. Because honestly, what's the point?
You can't do anything about it. And I think that's what this movie is it's what a big part of the movie is positing, right? Like, what anybody decides to do with their final moments, is it any, within reason, obviously, but like, how is it?
How's it different than anything else?
Exactly.
Everybody has final moments, and a lot of people don't even realize it at the time.
Right.
Some people do. That's what it is. It's like, it's forcing the issue, right? This premise is about forcing the issue. It's about, okay, everybody has to stare death in the face at the same time. What happens? And a lot of these movies, weirdly enough, don't do what this movie does, which is a series of vignettes following. And that's kind of like when I keep saying about a mini series, where I'm like, it's too big. You can't do it in an hour and a half, 2 hours. But this movie did manage to do it. And the way they managed to do it is to do a bunch of little stories throughout the apocalypse. And that's a very smart way to do it. Because, again, how do you cover it? You can't just follow one person.
Yeah.
Because then you're only following one aspect of how people react to it. And the problem is that the same way, death is numerous and random, so are people. So it's like, you can't... even this movie can't cover every single way people would react to something like
even this movie is extremely limited in what types of experiences it portrays, for sure.
But it's trying to handle a spectrum, and do it in a way that feels good and isn't a bummer. This movie wasn't a bummer, by the way. If people are wondering, I didn't find it that much of a bummer.
No, it is. It's sad. It's bittersweet in a lot of parts, but like. Yeah, like I said, it's more moving than it is a sad movie.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I like the random horror beats, like I had mentioned. The music it gets real bold in a couple of sequences. Like there's a long shot of Sandra Oh walking down the street, and it's kind of like the most apocalyptic vision of the city we've seen so far. And they play that there, and they said they play the horror music again when the sex maniac is showing off his little dungeon room, his little planning hut.
Yeah.
And there's another one when like Sandra Oh, I think, is walking across a bridge. Like go ahead.
It's a dangerous world,
right?
And they don't go too much into it, but they go enough into it that you realize like some horrific things are being done.
Oh yeah,
on this day because no one cares. You know,
right?
It doesn't matter.
Like Cronenberg gets murdered, like just for randomly,
Lord knows
no
what reason. Yeah.
One of the cars they flag down. It's clearly like we should not put Sandra Oh into that car.
That's the director of Hardcore Logo, by the way. He's one of the people in the car.
Hell yeah, he is.
Yeah. That was a funny moment where he's trying to flag cars to give her a ride, and it's just these three like just scumbags.
They look like three of the gang members from Batman Forever.
Yeah, they do. And they're just
leering at Sandra Oh.
Yeah. And he's just like, never mind.
Yeah, you know what? We're all right. We're all set here.
Yeah, that was I like
that they don't like
detail.
dwell on it, but they still, because obviously this movie would get like more into like the Purge territory if it was going.
No, it's happening in the background,
right? It is happening,
and then
right.
Every now and then it intersects with what they're trying to do,
right?
Because it's not that. It's an interesting view of humanity because, for example, the Purge movies. To the Purge movies' credit, one of the things that always bothered me when I first heard of the Purge was like, I don't believe humans would do that. And what the Purge movies did very smartly is they show that it was actually instigated by the government. I don't know if you saw the first Purge.
I did,
the movie,
yeah.
The first
we covered
Purge.
it, Dave.
Yeah. They don't kill each other, and the government has to make them start. So it has to be this cycle of fear and paranoia that everybody starts hurting each other. And so this movie recognizes the fact that there are people who are just trying to be good and decent, you know? And there are other people who just don't give a fuck. And then there are people who are genuinely just being really bad. And it doesn't like dwell on any one of those. It's trying to show that spectrum again. Mm-hmm. And I think it does it pretty well by not focusing on the chaos, but having the chaos always kind of there.
Yeah. Having it
getting in the way.
In the background. And and occasionally getting in the way in big ways.
Yeah. Like trying to travel, which is what Sandra Oh is doing, is pretty much impossible, is the idea. It's like trying to get from one side of the city to the other. It's like you can't do that. You just can't.
No, the first thing we see is they flip her car over just, for shits and giggles. And then later they flip the bus with the mom and her teenage kid inside.
Yeah. Again, just for the fuck of it.
Yeah, just because.
Yeah. I don't know. It's very interesting film. Very, definitely going to stay with me for a very long time.
Yeah. It was a real unexpected one. I didn't, especially after, again, the opening. Trust me, if you give this movie a shot, stick with it, because the first scene is not, you got to get more of the picture. Like, don't judge it based on your first impression of the main character.
No, and again, it's the good kind of writer director starring where he's taking the hit in a way. He's like, I'm going to be the jerk at the beginning of this, and he did good enough that by the way, he's an actor. He's in a lot of things. He's actually in a lot of David Cronenberg films.
That makes sense.
Yep, he's in the Crimes of the Future most recently.
Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know. He's done some stuff that I guess I have to see. He did something with Brendan Gleeson called The Grand Seduction. That's fairly recently, and I'm like, well, it's not. It's 2013. I don't know. I kind of need to see more of his films. I assume a lot of them are like kind of quirky comedies, but that's just a guess.
I don't know.
But this was enough to make me go like, shit. I guess I'm gonna have to see more of this person's films. But he's mostly an actor. He's acted in more movies, so it makes sense why he'd cast himself.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
Good and easy,
yeah,
right?
That's good and easy. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, he did fine.
Yeah.
It's a hard job.
It's an odd performance until it starts to become clear, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Why he's this way.
Why he's behaving the way he's behaving. You're like, oh man, this is just...
Sandra Oh's great as always.
Oh, she's really good. Yeah.
Cronenberg, I always expect him, and I think it's because he like has that vague fucking David Lynch look to him. Like he's this like old weirdo.
Yeah.
With I always expect him to be more of a weirdo than he is when he appears in films. This movie and Jason X, I guess, are the two.
Well, Nightbreed.
And Nightbreed.
He's the murderer.
Yeah. He's more of he's a Lumberg type in this. Like he's shitty boss. And he's just sort of like a boring, serious old guy. And like at first I didn't like it took me a minute to go like, that is Cronenberg, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like why isn't he weirder? Like
He's
shouldn't he be a weirder guy?
No, he's just a guy that's like
Cronenberg.
really dedicated to his job.
Shouldn't he have like shouldn't he be part insect or something?
Right,
Like,
yeah.
it's weird.
It's funny how like not weird he is and how like gentle he is during the home invasion at the end of the film.
Yeah, but he is very like haunting.
He is still very haunting.
I feel like he knows he's gonna die and he's like, I might as well like scar this guy psychologically before I die. What a way to go out.
Yep. Shotgunned in his living room.
That's how I want to spend the last day on Earth.
Next to my carton of ice cream.
Yeah.
Shotgunned by a guy named Marty.
Yeah. Oh, what a nightmare.
Well, his girlfriend's like, come on, Marty. We're going to be late for the party.
He's going to be killed by a man named Marty.
Marty.
What a fucking
on his way to
nightmare.
a fucking party.
What would you do on your last day?
I don't know, man. Take bumper cars on the highway.
That'd be fun. I want to take a dump in the White House.
Oh, yeah.
Like not in a bathroom.
No, in the White House, right. Just in a fun little spot, like a cat.
Yeah.
See if they can find it before the world ends.
I feel like if I knew for a month that I had a month to do it, I could probably get that done.
You can pull it off.
Yeah. Probably, yeah. Maybe rewatch like, The Sopranos too, if I had a month.
Oh, I thought
like,
you were saying it for a second. I thought you meant to like plan for your White House dumpage, and I didn't.
No. It's just a couple.
I was going to suggest like
things.
maybe watch like White House Down or
right
the West Wing.
Right.
What was the Channing Tatum one?
White House Down.
Oh, that is White House Down? Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I do that before the world ends. I do like a public viewing of White House Down.
I think that's a charitable thing for you to do, Dave.
Yeah,
if there is an afterlife, that would surely grant you admittance.
Yeah. Or like the first thing I see is like, the afterlife and whoever's in charge just being like, really? That? I was like, yeah.
White House Down, huh?
White House Down. All right.
You went for that.
I mean, I hope you're happy to know you're the only person to do that. So there's that. Good for you. Yeah, this I don't really have much more to say about this movie.
Yeah, I think
I would say that it's just what a pleasant surprise going into this film. Hearing it was again, Blindness is a good movie. See it, but it's heavy. It's a lot, and like seeing that plus just it being labeled as downbeat, I was like, is this going to be like the most sad, fucking depressing
this is
movie?
Kick my ass.
Yeah, and it ended up feeling like pretty oddly profound, which is like hard for a movie to do. Like I don't expect movies to be profound in ways,
Yeah, it's difficult
because it's and it's just like honestly, I don't expect this guy's other movies to be profound even after this.
Sure,
it's just like this sort of hit right, and now I kind of had that question. I was like, did it hit me right? And now hearing you, there's like sort of affirmation there that it's like, okay, so yeah, they did a good job.
I think they did. Yeah, I think this is a good movie.
Yeah, and I didn't look up like I didn't look up if
no,
it's
I didn't
like
read anything
well
about the movie really,
or anything like that. Yeah, it's well reviewed. Looking at I read that the director apparently was given a project. There's a project called 2000 Scene By from France, which was supposed to be about. They were producing films about the millennium. Okay. From the perspective of different countries. And he was like, I don't want to do something about the millennium because after the millennium happens, no one will watch the movie about the millennium because that's silly, right? So he was like, instead, he'll do something about the end of the world, and basically didn't do that millennium thing, and was like, I think obviously again it is sort of a Y2K movie in the sense that he was inspired by the millennium, but that's where it was conceived, according to all the stuff I read about it. So that's
interesting.
neat.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, and it
makes sense.
I don't know. I hope more people see it because I hadn't heard of this fucking movie.
No,
but
I mean it's Canadian, so.
Yeah, exactly. And as we've talked about, there are so many movies.
Yeah, and it's a independent film. So this is a small movie.
Yeah, it's a very small movie, but it looks big for what it's doing. You know,
It looks like a big, strong movie.
it's a big, strong movie. Came out the same year as Armageddon, didn't it?
98, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good year.
So
Hello
yeah,
Nasty
good year for,
also came out that year.
Yeah. So I don't know. Watch this and watch Armageddon.
Yeah, do it.
Back to back.
Do it.
They're basically the same.
They're
thing.
kind of the same thing. They're the same movie, really. They're
Yeah.
both about the end of the world, finding somebody.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you.
Stephen, yeah, thank you. I never would have found this film if it weren't for you, and I am so glad I did. So thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
This was through our Patreon, patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. There's a tier where you can, have us do We Just Watch movies for movies that you pick out, which is how this got created. But we also, just for $5 a month, we have a bunch of exclusive podcasts on there. Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder's a Maniac, Star Trek The Next Future on the Spiel Boys. You can get them all for just $5 a month. We watch movies every Friday night as well. We'll probably watch Armageddon. I don't know if we'd watch this.
Yeah, this might not. I don't know.
No, but we have fun. We have fun.
We have fun. Yeah,
so
yeah.
We have a Discord community. Great community. Lots of things to do. Check us out.
Yes, check that out. We also have a store. Head over to gamefortheunemployed.com where you can find a link to our Teespring store where we have all kinds of cool original art and designs you can get on t-shirts, mugs, stickers, posters, all sorts of things. So slap your world-ending peepers onto that.
Yeah. And look out for death.
Yeah, it's out there.
Yeah, it's out there.
Get yourself a little sex plotting room.
Yeah, Tony Todd's out there. He's going to get you.
Was there a microwave
not Final
in there?
Destination.
Like, what's that? It was his kitchen, right? He turned his kitchen into his sex cartography
It was a
room.
sex kitchen. Yeah, sex kitchen.
Doing his sex charts.
That's pretty great. He's microwaving mac and cheese.
Yeah, there's
and
just a
thinking about
microwave
sex.
buried under all these notes.
Yeah. Yeah, he is. If the world didn't end, he was going to kill people. He's a serial killer.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, good on him.
It's a good thing in terms of this guy's immediate sphere that the world is ending.
It's possible the sun exploded just to kill him.
To get rid of him, right.
Yeah, so I was like, we got to do something about him. I'm the sun. I only really have one thing I can do.
Yeah, there's really one thing I can do. Well, two things, really.
Yeah.
I can get really hot or really cold.
Yeah. Guess which one I'm doing.